Jay Clark here. We're going to do a little tech tip on some oil change on a CRF 250, which has oil compartments on both sides of the motor, one for that's more the piston side and the other side that's the transmission and clutch side. So we're going to drain both those, put a new oil filter in, and we'll give you some tips on how to do it all right now. So first we're going to remove the caps. A lot of times there's a little bit of residue of dirt right there. You want to make sure you get all that off. See right there? So a little paper towel, make sure you get all this out of there. Try not to drop too much in the motor. Even though it's a dirt bike, we don't want to have too much in the engine there. So, and we like to keep the caps off the bike. That tells us that we need to put oil in it, so we don't ever forget not to put oil back in the bike. And now we'll do the same thing on the, we call this the motor side, but it's because it's the motor oil goes on this side, so the engine oil. Do the same thing. This one, make sure the O-ring's still nice and good. It'll usually flip back on. Usually those will last a long time. Okay, so we're going to first loosen the lower drain bolt. Now this is the motor oil stuff, which is kind of the stuff that runs in the piston and cylinder and stator side. So we're going to loosen that. And you can see the washer the washer's still in relatively good shape, so we'll keep that on there. If the washer becomes any more damaged than that, we'll like to put a new washer on there. Those crush washers you can buy from directly from Honda. They do crush quite a bit, so usually you can only get 2 or 3 oil changes out of those. So now we're going to remove the transmission side drain, which is a long bolt. It goes all the way through the motor, and this is going to let the transmission oil out. Easier just do them both at the same time. It'll clear easily, and then we'll mix a mess all over the frame, so we'll let that drain out. Let's look and see what the washer looks like. Washer's still in relatively good shape, so we'll keep that on there. Any more smash than that, where it starts to bend around, we'll want to replace that washer. So first we're going to remove the engine guard just to make it much easier to get to the oil filter. T-handle will remove the two bolts that go through the stator cover. At this point right here, you want to make sure you don't lose the spring. There's a spring right behind the oil filter. And a lot of times it likes to drop into your oil bucket, which is kind of fun to dig out, but you can pull it out, grab the spring, just drop our filter. We usually just leave it in the oil there and get it out later. Good idea to wipe the any residue around the filter area and inside there. Get it all nice and clean. And then we're going to install our new filter. We got our new twin air oil filter. We put a hair bit of grease in here, and that holds the spring steady. A lot of guys will have the spring drop. This way the spring will hold steady as you put it in and hold it taut up against the case. And again, wipe and clean the cover. It can only go on one way. It lets the oil passage go through the motor, like right through here. So you spin it till you're lined up. You want to keep pressure against the spring so that it doesn't push the oil filter out and get sideways. It's a good idea to get the long bolt started first. The short bolt, if you push on it with pressure on it, can strip the threads out of the case. So getting the long bolt started first, and we're getting about 3/4 the way down, and then we're going to start the short bolt and drive it down most of the way, and then go back and forth evenly. That keeps our O-ring from getting pinched, and we have good seal. And then just good and snug on those as you would any case bolt. Wipe off the surface, and we're going to reinstall the engine guard right there. Okay, so at this point we're holding the bike straight up and side to side a little bit. Let's get a lot more oil out of the motor. We want to try and get as much oil out as we can, of course. Good idea to let it drain as long as you can. Let all the oil you see dripping out. Okay, so now we're going to reinstall the transmission drain bolt and it's really long. You want to be really careful that you don't force it at all, that you feel it go into its home, because a lot of people can get off on the angle of the bolt, and you'll feel it want to go into its home, and once it goes in, then you can drive it down, and it doesn't have to be very tight. They have a crush washer, so just snug is good. And now we'll wipe it clean, and then we're going to reinstall the other drain bolt underneath. Okay, so now we're going to reinstall the bolt, the drain bolt. As you can see, we already checked to make sure the washer's there. Sometimes the washer will stay on the engine case, and then it'll sometimes fall into the oil pan. You want to make sure you have that washer on. Look on the case, look on the bolt. If you don't see it, look in your oil pan. So now we're ready to go. We're going to install our new oil on both sides of the motor. Okay, so at this point, it's a good idea to, we use a ratio, right? Just makes it easier for us. So first one, we put 500 in because that's the most you can get in. So we'll put 500 in, and on this side, we'll run about 700. So we'll do 500 in this first go, and then just finish it up with another 200. Nice to have a nice little funnel or something. So now we're finishing up the transmission side. It's a good idea to use a really good transmission fluid. With the Honda having two separate compartments, it's nice that you can run a transmission fluid on this side, a motor oil on the other side of the motor. Now we'll reinstall our, and we know it's full with our cap on. Again, these don't have to be extremely tight. You just want to get them nice and snug. Now we'll switch over to the other side of the motor. So now on the motor side oil, we're going to put 650 cc's in. That'll usually get us pretty close, and we'll double check oil height after we start it and let it cool down. We'll get the bike level, straight, and we'll just dip the dipstick in. And we want to have our oil level right at the top of the line, so that if we burn any oil, we're ready to go. Not over the line, just right at the top of the line. And get it good and snug, and we're ready to go.